This talk is about why creativity is important and how to develop it. Creativity is relevant to everybody, whether you are a soccer coach, an entrepreneur, or a parent. In some ways, creativity is part of our DNA. We are natural-born toolmakers, for example. Still, creativity is more a function of need and habits than a given talent. Even people who consider themselves creative go through periods where they are not creative. It could be due to a role they take on that doesn't demand it. On the other hand, many people who think they are not creative might come up with a joke that makes everyone laugh. You might wonder, why is creativity important? We live in a time where competition is high, and the world is changing fast. We know that we have to innovate to survive, and creativity plays a significant role. There are three major things I would like to discuss in terms of what creativity can do for you. The first benefit is that creativity recognizes and solves problems. Jack Ma, the chairman of Alibaba, says that you should always listen to what people complain about. Creative people identify problems worth their time and set about solving them. A British rail worker many years ago had to replace copper wire on overhead cables regularly. Many of his co-workers would have accepted wear and tear on the cables, but he suggested fitting a rayon sleeve over the wire and saved large sums of money. The second benefit of creativity is that it can see opportunities. Some opportunities come to us by way of contacts or customer inquiries. For many others, we need to look for gaps and identify tie-ups. Either way, getting to grips with opportunities often requires imagination. Many opportunities that are handed to people on a plate are dismissed because of a fixed mindset. Many of you are probably aware that Kodak stuck to photo film during the digital revolution. They were aware of the change, but they had a distorted view. Creativity goes hand in hand with exploring possibilities. The third benefit of creativity is that it can delight customers. Customers notice when you adopt new ways, and it makes their lives better. This is why the furniture maker IKEA is such a well-loved company. Creativity does not by any means guarantee better commercial outputs, but it is often a precursor. Creativity is seen as one of the key skills in the 21st century. The question is, how do we become more creative? To sum up, if you work hard and you combine thoughts in new ways, you can be creative. But there are some guidelines, and I will now go through some. The first tip is to just build things. Have you noticed how full of ideas you become when you build a simple project like a rock feature? Some of the best innovators in history were constantly creating things. Thomas Edison virtually lived in his lab, working 18 hours a day. Of special mention in building things is prototypes. Prototypes enable you to explore new realms with quick feedback. Prototyping switches on the creative brain because you need to be resourceful and solve problems. The second tip is to keep the problem in mind. Linger on problems. Live, breathe, sleep on them. John Cleese, a writer for the Monty Python series, regularly worked on episode sketches just before going to bed and woke up with good ideas on many occasions. The best way to linger on problems is when you are relaxed. Einstein asked, "Why is it I always get my best ideas while shaving?" Taking regular breaks is important too. An important part of creativity is reframing the problem or situation. I'll give an example. Say you want to buy a door. You might focus on the kind of door and which supplier to choose, but maybe you haven't interrogated why you need the door. Could the area be open plan? I'll give another example. Recently, you may have heard of a South African entrepreneur who invented an app that sends an alert to emergency services if you have been involved in a car accident. He does not see his company as being a crash detection app. He sees his company as being in the business of saving lives in car accidents. How does this make a difference? Well, he also developed a feature that allows people with first aid training to be notified of an accident near them. To reframe, ask, what do we really want to achieve? Ask lots of questions in general. Try to put yourself in different shoes. How would a statistician think about this? How about female customers? Remember, to a man with a hammer, everything looks like nails. So get a handle on different perspectives. Curiosity gets you a long way. The next tip is to create a stimulating learning environment. One way to achieve this is to instill continuous learning. Try new things, especially in personal experiences. The company that pioneered car tracker technology in South Africa initially struggled to locate vehicles because the accuracy of GPS was only within a few hundred meters. While the founder was on a safari holiday, he saw how the park rangers used radio to track animals, and he got the brainwave to apply the same technique to track cars. By simply having a different experience, the company became viable. To support continuous learning, ask people what they would like to learn that can benefit the company, and help them with resources, some time or money for books. People can learn very well under self-direction, without formal courses. With continuous learning, it is important to have the correct makeup of knowledge, know a little about a lot and a lot about a little. For a stimulating environment, job rotation helps. It doesn't have to be a different title, it could just involve different assignments. The bonus is that people can maybe discover where their interests lie. For a stimulating environment, it helps to have diverse contributors. Creativity is increasingly becoming a team sport. We all have different styles of thinking and different backgrounds, and these differences are vital to produce the best outcomes in creative endeavors. What we often find, though, is that differences in style lead to pushback, and that is terrible for creativity in teams. Aim to explore the validity of other people's views and resist knee-jerk reactions. For a stimulating environment, the office layout can be instrumental. Perhaps experiment with spaces that have more variety. This can also help to attract creative people in recruitment. The next tip is to connect the dots. Draw a mind map with names of different technologies, geographies, products, and more. Draw connections between them. In so doing, you will hit on many ideas. There are other ways of connecting the dots though. For artists and writers, being more aware of chance encounters can help them to identify useful elements or symbols they can incorporate into their work. The next tip is that observation is a key to creativity. This is how you can discover real problems to solve. Sam Walton, the founder of Walmart, spent a lot of time around his customers to understand their problems. Wherever you are, look for the little clues as if you were Sherlock Holmes. We grow to automatically filter things out, like adverts on YouTube. Try to see things with fresh eyes. Stephen Levitt, a co-author of Freakonomics, said that as a consultant, some of his best insights came when he arrived at companies for the first time. An important part of observation is to pay attention to what experts are doing in fields related to your interests. If you surround yourself by first-rate work, a bit of magic rubs off on you. The next tip is to embrace humor. Laughing and creativity draw from the same well. Laughter is about differences that come together in absurd ways. Creativity is often about bringing ideas together in meaningful and beneficial ways. If you tap into humor, you'll find a lot of creativity. To instill humor, why not start with a daily email quotation, which often contains humor? It has been shown that for a given time, those who generate many ideas, rather than those who aim for good ideas, produce more original and better quality work in the end. If you only search for gold nuggets, you will miss out on a lot of gold in the dirt. One technique is to brainstorm. The way it works is that teams, or even individuals, focus only on coming up with ideas and jotting them down. One idea often sparks another. Avoid judgment at first encounter. After thinking outside the box, try to select ideas that are close to the box. It is easier to win rugby games on home grounds than foreign turf. The Dyson company, famous for making vacuum cleaners that are bagless, took their skills in airflow consumer products into bathroom hand dryers and once again transformed an industry. Many companies have fallen flat on their face because they pursued ideas where they had little or no experience. The last point on generating ideas. Many people have said that ideas are cheap. They say that execution is what matters. However, good execution often involves many ideas that point in the same direction. Scattered ideas get you nowhere. The next tip is to make things visual. It basically helps to put your mind in the actual situation. Coming from an engineering environment, there were many times where I lacked insight into a problem because I didn't draw the equipment and process well enough. Once good sketches were made, the lights went on. The next tip is that creativity loves constraints. Limitations bring out resourcefulness. It could be limited time, money, personnel, or equipment. The restaurant chain Ocean Basket started in 1995 at Medland Park Center, with only 800 Rand in starting capital and 60 square meters of trading space. The landlord imposed certain restrictions to protect other restaurants in the center. Ocean Basket was not allowed to serve desserts or salads, and they were only allowed to serve 1 glass of wine per customer. They focused on the quality of their seafood, and you may be aware that Ocean Basket serves many dishes in a hot pan, unusual for restaurants. They encouraged patrons to bring their own dessert and drinks not on the menu. They also kept their prices low. Starting out with major limitations, Ocean Basket became a unique restaurant that customers loved. Today, the restaurant chain has annual sales exceeding 2 billion Rand. Self-imposed limits can be difficult to adhere to. Managers, in contrast, can be effective at setting boundaries. The online retailer Amazon also believes in constraints that give more, not less. Like what would happen if you had a team of 500 instead of 5. The next tip is to set specific targets. Remember that need is the mother of invention. Targets get the need juices flowing. No better example of this than the Apollo space program. When JFK said, "We choose to go to the moon" in 1962, NASA mobilized their teams and Neil Armstrong took his first famous step in 1969. The next tip is to have stretch goals. If you ask how to increase your revenue by 10%, you'll tweak your marketing. If you ask how to double it, you're more likely to think in a transformative way. In the 1950s, after the Second World War, Japan was focusing on growing its economy. Thousands of people took the train between Tokyo and Osaka, and the trip took 20 hours because of mountainous terrain. The government set a challenge to engineers for the train to go faster. They started with a small increase, and within a few years, they set the maximum speed target to 120 miles per hour. Within a decade of setting the first challenge, the first bullet train did its inaugural trip. The next tip is that people work best when their goals have a higher purpose. This point was well put by a famous French aviator. He said, "The way to get people to build a ship is not to teach them carpentry, assign them tasks and give them schedules to meet, but to inspire them to long for the sea." To further support that point, consider Google's company mission: to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. The next tip is to keep making little improvements. You might think that this contradicts stretch goals, but rather it is a complementary habit. Ask, how can this be improved? Even if you do the same job for 30 years, making essentially the same product, you can still be creative every day. Watch the sushi maker Jiro Ono on YouTube or Netflix. You will be amazed at how this veteran chef still has a fresh take on the art of sushi. Creativity within your realm can be rewarding, because you have a good feel for what can work. The next tip is to ask for feedback and suggestions in a personal and convenient way. To appreciate the power of feedback, go onto Amazon and look at the suggestions customers give to manufacturers. Customers can give you creativity for free. The next tip is to reward innovation. Sailors before the year 1714 could not accurately determine their longitude while sailing. They could only measure their latitude with confidence, and this led to many maritime disasters. A competition was launched to solve the problem, which offered a sizable cash prize. Solutions were found, and so the longitude prize helped to reinvent ocean navigation. The message is, award prizes for notable innovations. The X Prize Foundation does just that. The next tip is to convert failure into value. We know we should turn lemons into lemonade, but when disaster strikes, we forget how powerful that idea is. It takes a lot of creativity, but it builds character. Many times, people walk away from failure, and even worse, repeat their mistakes. A good way to learn from failure is to be a good listener. If you shoot or ignore the messages stop coming. The next tip is about faith and persistence. In creative ventures, failure is a constant companion, and success seldom visits. Van Gogh, the famous artist, produced more than 2,000 works of art and sold only 2 during his life. Remember that he only lived to the age of 37, and many Nobel Prize winners are over 60 years old. The final tip is that creativity is not a label, it is a habit. You are not creative because you painted a good landscape 10 years ago. You are also not necessarily creative because you played the guitar yesterday. You are creative because you regularly produce something new.